In 1990, Bulgaria. The Bulgarian Communist Party, the former communists, they renamed themselves as the Bulgarian Socialist Party. And they won the 1990 elections in the sense that they took 211 of the 400 seats in the parliament. Do you think that the United States accepted that? All these international observers were there from Western Europe and other places, and they all said this was absolutely free and fair. There was no fraud at all that we could detect. But the United States didn't accept that. And so nowadays, instead of having just the CIA going around behind the scenes and trying to manipulate the process secretly by inserting money here and instructions there and so forth, they have now a sidekick, which is this National Endowment for Democracy, NED.
Yeah.
And this organization dates from 1967. A lot of people don't realize, because it was just established in, I think, 83 or so, but the idea emerged from a series of scandalous revelations in 1967. What happened was the long-running CIA's control and manipulation of the international program of the National Students Association in this country, which was the national organization of university students, came out. It was revealed. And that led to revelations of a lot of other CIA operations, because they were using the same bogus and real foundations to channel money into all these different overseas organizations. And I remember very well that Time magazine at the time, or Newsweek, I think it was Time, they published a wheel with all these spokes going out, and the CIA was at the center, and then halfway out were all these foundations, American organizations, and then out at the end were the foreign groups that got the money and the instructions. Naturally, they don't give away money without being sure that it's spent the way they want it spent. And so this was a catastrophe for the CIA. And the next month or the month after that, this started in February of '67, and then by April, I think it was, Dante Fachel, the congressman from Florida, was proposing the establishment of an open system to finance these overseas organizations. And we're talking about some government organizations abroad, some political parties, some media organizations, youth organizations and student organizations, all these kinds of so-called pluralist organizations, when in fact they weren't really free organizations, because to the degree that they take money and instructions from the CIA, to that degree they're not free at all, right? But anyway, Fachel came up with this idea, but it didn't go anywhere, because the so-called consensus between the two parties had broken down over Vietnam. And so it wasn't until the early '80s, when Reagan made his speech in the House of Commons about the democracy project worldwide, that this began to take on steam again. And finally, they decided to copy the German example. Each of the major German political parties has a foundation which is financed by the German government. Before it was West Germany, now the whole country. And, for example, the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung is the SPD, or the Social Democratic Party's foundation. And they finance projects all over the place, and for years in the 50s and 60s, and I would guess even into the 70s. In fact, I know into the 70s and even to the early 80s, the CIA was channeling money through these German foundations abroad. For example, some money, a lot of money, I think it was $1 million or more, but I'm a little hazy on the amount. But anyway, it went through it was CIA money which went through the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. That's the Christian Democratic Union. It went from there to IVEPO, which is a foundation of the COPE, the Christian Democrats in Venezuela. Oh. And from there, it went to the Christian Democrats in El Salvador, to Duarte, for use in the elections. I've forgotten which year, maybe '84 or something like that. And it was traced. Some journalists did this. And so that is the way they would use these German foundations in the past. So now we've got our own. We don't have to use the Germans unless we really want to anymore. Because in 1984, we established this National Endowment for Democracy, which is nothing but a mega conduit. And the millions or the tens of millions that are set aside for the meddling in the internal affairs of other countries goes to this conduit. It's like a bank account or something, but they have a board of directors and they do reports and stuff like that. But then it goes from there to one of four private foundations. One of the Democratic Party, one the Republican Party, or two, three the AFL-CIO, and four the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. These groups then pass it out to recipients in foreign countries. And in the Nicaraguan elections of 1990, I believe the figure was something like 12.5 million that went from the National Endowment for Democracy through these conduits to the UNO political movement there.